Hello, welcome to the second video in my series about the basics of Terraform. In this video, I'm going to talk about remote state and state backends. By the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of what a remote state backend is. You'll be able to work with one, you'll know why we do it, and you'll be a step closer to working with Terraform in a professional capacity. If you've gone through the last video, you should be set up with credentials. Otherwise, if you can do an AWS command and you're authenticated, and if you've got Terraform available to you, then we're good to go. Okay, let's get started by creating some AWS resources. I'm going to create a bucket. As before, we do resource, type, and then name. This is an internal name, and then I'll set the bucket argument here, which is the name of the bucket. Save that, pop over here, do an init. And as I mentioned in the last video, what Terraform is going to do is go away and install the binaries that it needs to work with AWS for us. And you can see these files have appeared. We've got Terraform lock and a copy of the AWS provider binary there, but let's ignore those for now. So I've initialized. Let's go straight to an apply. Yes, give me that bucket. Okay, good. So we've got a bucket. Just to show you again, if I refresh, there we go, one bucket. Cool. Now that I've run Terraform, it's storing its state. Because there's no other configuration, it's storing its state locally. So this file here is a big JSON file that has all of the information about the Terraform resources that we're managing in it. We don't really want to check this file into Git, into source control, and pass it around that way for a couple of reasons. One is that's not the most secure way of doing it. You know, there could be sensitive, secret information in this file. And the other thing is that it means the changes in this state file would be very tightly tied to the workflow and life cycle of changes in your Git repository. Don't worry too much if that doesn't mean a lot to you. I'll just explain how we set up storing this state in somewhere like S3. And I'll sort of demonstrate how that helps us to get around the problem of sharing state in the backend. So I've got this file that I don't want to store locally. So what I'll do is go into my Terraform setup here, and I'll configure the Terraform block. And I'll do backend. I'm going to choose the S3 backend because we're working in AWS. And I'm going to do bucket key. Let's do basics. Lesson 2, terraform.tf state. And then I'll just set region for good measure. And I think I'm using EU West 2. Now, what this tells Terraform to do is store this file, its memory, at this location. So in the bucket we've just created, at this key, this path. So the file name will be terraform.tf state, and it'll be under basics lesson 2. And if I go here and do terraform init again, Terraform will tell me pre-existing state was found while migrating the previous local backend to the newly configured S3 backend. No existing state, so there's no file there already. Was found in the newly configured S3 backend. Do you want to copy this state? Let's say yes. And we've got successful initialization. And if I go into S3, we'll see terraform.tf state. And it was last modified just now, and that is the same file that we've got locally. I think, okay, so what does that give me? Well, there are a couple of things we can do once we've got that file remotely. The first is to enable versioning on the bucket, and this will just give us let's just call that anything, and then we refer to the bucket. As before, we refer to the bucket by naming an attribute of it so that there is a dependency link between this versioning object and the bucket itself. And then there's a block here, versioning configuration, and I'll do status equals and then enabled. And I'll apply that and then show you what versioning does. So let's apply. Say yes. Okay. So just to demonstrate versioning, let's create an object as an example. So I'll do resource, AWS S3 object, example, bucket, as always, is this one. And then we'll do key. And then let's set content to something here. Save that so it's ready to go. And then if I go over here and do an apply, and create an object. But yes, don't worry too much about what I'm creating here. I just wanted to demonstrate that when I make a change, if I go and refresh this, well, first of all, index.html is there, and I've now got this show versions toggle. And if I toggle this and then go into our Terraform state path, you can see that there are multiple versions of this Terraform state with different version IDs, and you can see when they were modified. And this is useful in case we get into a real mess with the Terraform state. We can always roll back. I think the easiest way to do it is if you delete the later versions so that the last version that's shown here is the known good one. So maybe if you were working on your Terraform and you mess something up during a day, you might go back and go, oh, if I just delete all the ones from today, then the one from last night is good. Not something we need to do very often, but it's a useful safeguard to have in place. We don't need to use the bucket that we've created here as the backend. So I've done it in this case just to have it all in one file, but in a lot of cases what I've seen is that you'll have one or multiple buckets that are created elsewhere, managed elsewhere, but the backend of a given sort of project, of a given Terraform stack, the state is stored in one of those buckets that's not managed in the same configuration. Okay, so I mentioned that this makes it easier to sort of cooperate on the same set of Terraform resources without having to share the state file around actively. I'll just show you what I mean by that by copying this stuff, and let's pretend I'm on another laptop. I'm another developer. I'm working on the same project. So, I would potentially have checked. Developer A would have checked this file into Git. Developer B would check it out, and you can see I haven't got any other sort of .terraform files in here. There's no state. There's no state backup. If I change to that directory from this location and run init, you can see it's using the same backend. So it says successfully configured the backend S3. And it's got the same configuration as the other one. Just a very quick note on this git ignore file. If you're using Git as source control for your Terraform stacks, you're going to want to ignore anything under .terraform and any files that are .tfstate or .tfstate.backup. And that just stops Git uploading those files to any remotes that you're using in Git, GitHub, for example, GitLab, any other Git provider. There's one last little thing I wanted to talk about, which is removing things from the state. So let's go back to our first developer's laptop, say. I'll just give you an example of removing something from the state. I'm going to use an S3 bucket because they're quick to create and destroy, and they need to be unique. So if we try to recreate it with Terraform later on, when it already exists, we'll get an error. So I can show you importing. I'll go into a bit more detail about that in a minute. So let's just call this another bucket. Pick a name that should be unique. Okay, we've got this bucket. If I refresh this, we can see this bucket here. Now, if I go to Terraform, I can do Terraform state list just to get an easy way to find these paths, because what we need to do to remove something from the state is state Terraform state rm and then the address of the resource. So let's do AWS S3 bucket, another bucket. There you go. You can see it's removed it from the state. Now, if I do Terraform plan again, Terraform wants to create the bucket, but if we look, it's still there. We haven't deleted the resource from AWS. We've just removed it from Terraform's state. So if I were to try to apply this, because bucket names are unique, we can't overwrite that bucket using Terraform. We'll get an error saying, in this case, the bucket is already owned by you. So what I need to do instead, to get this back into Terraform state, to get Terraform to control this bucket again, is Terraform import, do the path again. So let's do AWS S3 bucket dot another bucket. And then it's the name of the bucket. There you go, import successful. And if I do a plan, we'll see that there are no changes to make because Terraform is now managing this bucket for us. There's one last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is state locking. And what this avoids is getting into a situation where if you're working in a team, or maybe you have CI pipelines, automated systems that work with the Terraform that you're using, what state locking does is prevent people or systems from making changes or trying to make changes to the state at the same time. It used to be a bit fiddly to set up. You have to set up a DynamoDB table in AWS, for example, and it would create rows and remove them in that table when the state was being used. There's now this use lock file option that you can do. I won't go into it in great detail, but if you are using Terraform in a team, as well as setting up a remote state, also make sure that you are locking the state so that if one developer is making changes and another developer tries to make changes to the same resources, you don't get yourself into a mess. So that was a very, very quick overview of remote state. The main thing I think to remember is that you want to set up an S3 backend when you're using Terraform. And then you want to, if you're using Git or any other source control, make sure that you're not uploading the .tf state file to that source control, and instead let Terraform manage sort of storing that state in your remote backend. I hope that was useful and interesting. If there are any questions, let me know, drop a comment. I haven't decided which topic I'm going to cover next. There's a lot of ground to cover. Some of the ideas I had were doing variables and locals and data sources, which is quite interesting, modules and outputs and chaining modules together and dependencies between modules. I thought maybe a practical project where we host a website in S3, or we could go really crazy and start hosting services in ECS and Fargate and serving them so that we can look at writing code and building code into images and uploading that. So that would be quite an advanced topic, but good fun. If any of those are interesting, if there is anything you want to see outside that list, then give me a comment and I'll see if I can make a video about it for you. Okay, thanks for watching.